In the glittering courts of Europe, where kings and queens wrapped themselves in velvet and power, one dynasty believed they had found the secret to eternal supremacy: bloodline purity. For over 600 years, the Habsburgs ruled vast empires, stretching across continents, guided by a single principle: keep the crown within the family. What began as political brilliance turned into biological ruin, and their obsession with inbreeding became the silent weapon that destroyed them from within. The year is 1700. In Madrid, whispers echo through the palace halls about their king, Charles II of Spain. Known as El Hechizado, the Bewitched, Charles is less a monarch and more a living tragedy. His jaw juts so far forward he cannot chew, his tongue too large to contain, leaving him drooling constantly. His body is frail, his mind clouded, and despite 2 marriages, he has no heir. To his courtiers, he seems cursed by demons, but the true curse lay deeper, inscribed in his very DNA. Generations of Habsburg intermarriage had created a genetic nightmare. Modern science confirms what history suspected. Charles II's inbreeding coefficient was 0.254, greater than if his parents had been brother and sister. He was, mathematically, one of the most inbred humans in recorded history. He was not bewitched by sorcery, but by the merciless arithmetic of genetics. From Hawk's Castle to global thrones. The Habsburg story began humbly in 10th century Switzerland at a fortress called Habsburg, Hawk's Castle. From these modest roots, through cunning marriages and political maneuvering, the family soared. By the late Middle Ages, they controlled much of Central Europe. Their motto became legendary: Bella gerant ali, tu felix Austria nube. Let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry. And they did. Strategic unions gave them Spain, Austria, Burgundy, the Netherlands, and dominions stretching to the New World. By the 16th century, under Charles V, the Habsburg Empire stretched so wide that it was said the sun never set upon their lands. They controlled mines in the Americas, trade in the Mediterranean, fertile lands of Hungary, and alpine strongholds linking north and south. Never had one dynasty amassed such wealth, power, and territory. But beneath the golden splendor, cracks were forming. The very strategy that had built the empire, marital alliances, slowly mutated into an obsession with keeping everything inside the family. Instead of strengthening their genetic pool, the Habsburgs began recycling it.
The trap of purity. In the early days, their marriages had been shrewd. Philip the Handsome wed Joanna of Castile, bringing Spain under Habsburg rule. But by the 16th and 17th centuries, the pattern shifted. Political ambition narrowed the marriage market until Habsburgs married Habsburgs almost exclusively. Charles V married his first cousin. Philip II married both a cousin and later his niece. Philip IV took his niece Mariana, who would give birth to Charles II, the dynasty's tragic end. By then, their family trees looked less like trees and more like tangled webs, with the same ancestors appearing again and again. Courtiers noticed the consequences: strange jaws, slow minds, fragile bodies. Yet warnings were ignored. The Habsburgs convinced themselves their blood was superior, that concentrating it only made them stronger. Biology, however, plays by different rules. Genetics, the silent assassin. Science has given us the language to describe what history only observed. Every child inherits 2 copies of each gene, one from each parent. Diversity protects us, as harmful recessive traits are usually masked. But when close relatives marry, the chance of doubling harmful genes skyrockets. This is measured by the inbreeding coefficient. Children of first cousins, 0.0625. Children of siblings, 0.25. Charles II of Spain, 0.254. Charles wasn't the result of a single incestuous union, but of centuries of genetic recycling. In his genealogy, Emperor Charles V appeared 8 times. Philip II appeared 14 times. The result, a dynasty plagued by mandibular prognathism, the infamous Habsburg jaw, turning once subtle features into grotesque deformities. Hormonal deficiencies leading to stunted growth, infertility, and developmental delays. Neurological disorders, seizures, tremors, and mental disability. Weak immune systems, skin conditions, constant illness, and high child mortality. By the time of Charles II, the dynasty's genetic collapse was complete. He was unable to govern, unable to reproduce, and, ultimately, unable to save his empire. A kingdom without an heir. Charles II's reign was a parade of humiliations. He walked with a limp, drooled uncontrollably, and required interpreters even when speaking his own tongue. Exorcisms were performed on him, physicians prescribed animal entrails and bizarre concoctions, but nothing could repair what centuries of inbreeding had broken. Spain waited desperately for an heir, but none came. His 2 marriages remained childless. The empire's fate now rested not on armies or treasure, but on whether this broken king could sire a child. When Charles died in 1700 at just 38, his autopsy revealed the horrors inside: a heart the size of a walnut, corroded lungs, intestines rotted, and a single blackened testicle. He was the last of the Spanish Habsburgs.
The War of Spanish Succession. But Charles's death was not just a family tragedy, it was a continental catastrophe. With no heir, rival powers fought to claim the vast Spanish Empire. His will named Philip of Anjou, grandson of France's Louis XIV, as heir. Austria and the rest of Europe refused to accept French dominance, and soon the War of Spanish Succession engulfed the continent. From the battlefields of Flanders to the Caribbean seas, hundreds of thousands perished. By war's end, the Spanish Habsburg line was extinct, the empire fractured, and the dynasty's centuries-long dream of unity shattered. The long decline. The Austrian Habsburgs continued, but their Spanish cousins' collapse foreshadowed their own fate. Though they tried to outbreed by marrying outside more often, the scars of centuries of genetic damage lingered. Maria Theresa, one of the most formidable rulers, bore 16 children, yet many still showed the telltale marks: weak constitutions, fertility issues, and emotional instability. Her daughter, Marie Antoinette, would meet the guillotine in revolutionary France, a symbol of royal excess, but also a reflection of dynastic fragility. By the 19th century, Emperor Franz Joseph watched his family unravel in tragedy: his son, Rudolph's suicide, his wife Cici's assassination, and his heir Franz Ferdinand's assassination, sparking World War I. In 1918, after 6 centuries, the Habsburg Empire collapsed into exile.
A scientific cautionary tale. Modern geneticists confirm what history already wrote in human suffering. Studies of over 3,000 Habsburgs across 16 generations show a direct link between inbreeding and the dynasty's decline. Charles II's coefficient of 0.254 remains one of the highest ever recorded for a human being outside of small, isolated populations. Their downfall was not only political, but biological, a reminder that no empire, however vast, can escape the laws of nature. The legacy. The Habsburg tragedy lives on as more than history. It is a warning for modern genetics, for isolated communities, for endangered species, even for the possibility of human colonization in space. Their obsession with purity created catastrophe. Their story shows us that diversity is survival. They rose on the wings of hawks, ruled empires where the sun never set, but fell to the quiet, relentless mathematics of biology. In the end, it was not swords, revolutions, or foreign invasions that destroyed them, but their own blood.
The mask of majesty versus the whisper of the streets. While the courts of Vienna and Madrid dazzled with gold, music, and grand processions, the people beneath the crowns whispered another story. To peasants, soldiers, and merchants, the Habsburgs seemed both divine and cursed. In Spain, commoners called Charles II El Embrujado, the Bewitched One. Rumors spread that he had been hexed at birth by witches, or that the devil himself resided in his swollen tongue. The clergy performed over a dozen exorcisms during his lifetime. In 1698, one desperate attempt lasted 36 hours, with Charles strapped to a bed while priests screamed prayers into his ears. But no demon fled because none had entered. His curse was not spiritual, but genetic. This disconnect between superstition and science, appearance and reality, made the Habsburg tragedy even darker. The price of empire. Let's pause and reflect. The Habsburgs did not descend into weakness by accident. Their empire's very structure demanded constant self-preservation. Surrounded by France, the Ottomans, and rival German states, they saw family marriage as a shield. Each union tightened control over land, resources, and loyalty. It worked for centuries, but the strategy was like borrowing from the future. Every generation gained power at the cost of health. By the 17th century, that debt had come due. Imagine an empire spanning from the silver mines of Potosi in South America through the spice ports of Manila in the Philippines, across the fertile plains of Hungary, all the way to alpine castles. Yet its ruler could not walk without trembling, could not produce an heir, could not command without advisors pulling the strings. A world empire, in chains not of iron, but of blood. Forgotten tragedies within the dynasty. While Charles II is the most famous symbol, he was not alone. The dynasty was filled with silent victims. Don Carlos, Prince of Asturias, 1545 to 1668, son of Philip II, reportedly suffered from violent mood swings, paranoia, and fits of madness, today thought to be fueled by the same genetic inheritance. He died young, confined to his chambers, his erratic behavior a scandal in the court. Margaret Teresa of Spain, immortalized in Velázquez's painting Las Meninas, was married off to her maternal uncle Leopold I. She died at just 21 after giving birth to multiple children in quick succession, a brutal outcome of dynastic pressure. Maria Ana of Spain, Charles II's sister, was married to her uncle, Ferdinand III, Holy Roman Emperor. She spent much of her life sickly and frail, reflecting again the dynasty's invisible tax. Each of these figures shows that Charles II was not an anomaly. He was the climax of a long, slow biological implosion.
Science rewrites history. In recent years, geneticists have reconstructed the Habsburg pedigree with computer models. By mapping over 16 generations, they found that the dynasty's inbreeding levels were consistent with repeated uncle-niece and cousin-cousin marriages. Their findings revealed something chilling. The Habsburgs had effectively created a closed genetic island within the heart of Europe, resembling the risks we see today in isolated animal populations. In wolves of Isle Royale, too much inbreeding led to spinal deformities and near extinction. In cheetahs, genetic bottlenecks caused infertility and disease vulnerability. The Habsburgs mirrored the same biological fate, not as animals in the wild, but as emperors on thrones. Ethics and leg medals. The story of the Habsburgs is not just a medieval curiosity. It resonates in today's debates about power, genetics, and survival. In medicine, it reminds us why genetic diversity is crucial to prevent inherited diseases. In society, it warns against the obsession with purity, whether racial, cultural, or political, because isolation weakens, while diversity strengthens. In politics, it shows how empires fall not only from external enemies, but from internal decay, often invisible until it's too late. Even in the future, as humans contemplate colonizing Mars or creating isolated space colonies, scientists warn, if small populations interbreed too much, humanity could repeat the Habsburg tragedy among the stars. Closing scene. Picture the grand halls of El Escorial Palace, silent after Charles II's death. The tapestries remain, the golden altars gleam, but the throne is empty. The dynasty that once ruled continents is extinguished not by sword or revolution, but by its own blood. The Habsburgs rose higher than almost any family in history, and yet they fell by forgetting a simple truth: survival demands diversity. Their story is a monument, a warning, and a mirror. For power, wealth, and ambition can defy kingdoms and rewrite maps, but not the laws of nature.
As the final candle burned low in the halls of the Escorial, the last Spanish Habsburg lay in his coffin. Priests whispered prayers. Nobles hid their relief or despair behind jeweled masks, and peasants outside the palace doors wondered what future awaited them now that their bewitched king was gone. But history is not just about kings or bloodlines. It is about choices, and the choices of the Habsburgs echo across centuries. Their rise showed the genius of diplomacy and ambition. Their fall revealed the price of obsession and blindness to nature's rules. Empires may be built on gold, armies, or faith, but the Habsburgs remind us of something deeper. Power cannot outlast biology, and pride cannot escape the mathematics of survival. Today, their castles still stand, their portraits hang in museums, and their names are etched into the story of Europe. Yet their true legacy is not the crown jewels or the palaces. It is the warning that even the mightiest fall when they close themselves off from the world. So the question lingers, not just for dynasties, but for us all. Will we learn from the Habsburgs' fate, or are we too destined to repeat it?